Welcome, Fright Night Vault listeners. Imagine a house that smiles at you when you arrive. Its paint, chipped but proud. Its frame, worn but welcoming. A place whispered about in the neighborhood as a fine home, a strong home. But behind its windows, something waits. Something that has been waiting a very long time. The family that entered believed they were starting fresh. New walls to decorate, new rooms to fill with laughter, new dreams to carve into plaster and wood. They did not know that every nail, every beam, every brick carried whispers from another age, from a time when blood had been spilled and the earth beneath the house had been soaked in shadows. It began with sounds. Heavy footsteps in the upstairs hallway when all were seated at the dinner table. Slow pacing back and forth, as though someone was measuring the house by stride. The father rose to investigate, but each time he reached the top step, the sound ceased, leaving the air thick with silence. Then came the stench. Foul, sulfurous, impossible to scrub away. It seeped from the basement at night, rolling through the house in invisible waves. The family scoured drains, replaced pipes, and burned candles, but nothing erased the odor that clung to their throats like smoke. Soon, objects began to move. Not small nudges or tricks of memory, but deliberate violations of trust. Framed photographs flung from the walls in the dead of night. Silverware twisted into grotesque shapes, laid neatly in rows across the dining table. And then, the children. Their laughter grew brittle. Their eyes began to wander corners where nothing stood. One night, the youngest awoke screaming, swearing that a man had leaned over his bed, whispering words he could not understand in a voice that burned his ears. The house had opened its mouth, and now it would not close. The days bled into one another, each more suffocating than the last. The house no longer confined its tricks to shadows. It had grown restless, impatient, hungry. The children's rooms became the first battleground. Toys arranged neatly one evening were discovered mutilated the next morning. Dolls with missing heads, stuffed animals gutted and torn, their fluff scattered like entrails across the floor. And in the silence of the night, the faint sound of growling seeped through the vents, low and guttural, reverberating through the walls. The parents tried to anchor their lives in routine. They scrubbed the walls, painted the bedrooms, and blessed each doorway with whispered prayers. But the house seemed to mock them. Fresh paint peeled away overnight, revealing beneath it black streaks as though charred fingers had raked through the plaster. Holy water sprinkled along the baseboards hissed as if dropped on a stove. And then there were the marks, scratches carved into the children's arms while they slept, each wound shallow but burning, always in threes, like claws dragged with purpose. The father, too, bore them one night after shouting into the darkness, daring it to show itself. He woke to find his back shredded, as though by talons too large to be human. The mother became its focus. She felt cold hands grip her wrists in the dark, pinning her to the bed, though no figure was visible. At times, she swore she saw a shadowy mass at the foot of her bed, a figure too tall, too wide, featureless, and waiting. Neighbors began to whisper. They saw lights flickering at ungodly hours, curtains shifting when no one was awake. Visitors refused to enter after dusk, some leaving mid-conversation, muttering about the suffocating heaviness that greeted them as soon as they crossed the threshold. The family sought help. Priests, investigators, even friends with rosaries clutched tight. Each attempt at cleansing was met with retaliation. Objects hurled across rooms with bone-crushing force, growls amplified into roars. At one gathering, a crucifix was ripped from the wall and hurled into the crowd, its wooden frame splintering against the floor. The house was no longer whispering, it was roaring, declaring its dominion. And those who lived within its walls were now prisoners. The family's nights became a gauntlet of survival. Sleep was no longer rest, but a gamble, each evening descending into darker horrors. The air turned so cold, the walls themselves frosted, ice blooming across window panes in the dead of summer. One night, the eldest child awoke screaming, his body lifted from the bed and hurled against the wall with a force that cracked the plaster. His siblings swore they saw something holding him aloft, a massive shadow pressing him into the air, its eyes glowing faintly like coals in the dark. Another evening, the mother stumbled into the kitchen to find every drawer and cabinet flung open, knives arranged across the floor in the shape of a cross. As she froze in terror, the blades began to rattle, one by one, as though an unseen hand was choosing which would be used. She collapsed to her knees, clutching her children, certain the steel would rise against her. But the worst came during the attempted exorcism. A priest, resolute and trembling, stepped into the home with his Bible pressed tight to his chest. He had barely begun his prayers when the air shifted. The lights exploded overhead, plunging the house into violent strobe. A roar, not human, shook the foundations. The priest staggered, clutching his head, as deep gouges appeared across his arms as though invisible claws tore through flesh. The walls began to bleed. Thick black ooze seeped from the corners, dripping onto the floor and bubbling as if alive. The scent of sulfur was overwhelming, choking every breath. And then it came. The shadow, no longer hidden, no longer patient. It towered in the living room, a mass of writhing smoke and charred skin, its head grazing the ceiling, eyes like molten pits. The figure spoke, not in words, but in a sound that rattled bones, a sound so guttural it seemed to claw directly at the soul. Children shrieked, the mother fainted, the father fell to his knees, clutching the crucifix as the priest tried to scream the final rites. But the sound was drowned beneath the house itself. Walls groaning, glass shattering, doors slamming. The house was alive, and it wanted them dead. The family's strength cracked beneath the weight of unrelenting torment. Each day became a ritual of desperation. Holy water burned to mist. Prayers were answered only with laughter, and walls bled with the unseen's delight. At last, the father, broken and near mad, gathered what faith remained and demanded it end. He shouted into the house, his voice hoarse and breaking, "This is not your home. Leave us." The air fell silent. For the first time in years, no footsteps echoed, no growls whispered, no claws scraped the walls. The silence itself was terrifying, for what feels silent is often only waiting. And soon the family understood. This thing was not gone. It never leaves. It lingers. It watches. And even when the house grows quiet, it feeds still, in ways unseen. The story you just heard is no invention. You can look it up. The incident is called the Demon of Brownsville Road. From 1988 until 2014, a family in Pittsburgh claimed to be tormented by a presence darker than anything human. Their ordeal became the basis of the best-selling book, The Demon of Brownsville Road. In 2015, Fox attempted to bring it to television as a series. In 2021, New Line Cinema acquired the rights to turn it into a feature film. Yet to this day, the movie remains unrealized, as if even Hollywood feared completing it. Evil, it seems, does not need permission to enter. It simply waits until you unlock the door yourself. If tonight's story chilled your blood, remember to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to Fright Night Vault and never walk alone again. See you on the next video, listeners. And beware the house that stares back when you pass it in the dark.